The Grand Hall of the Crimson Moon Pack had never been so quiet. 500 wolves held their breath as Sarah Blackwood stood before Alpha Damon Silvercrest, her rejection letter trembling in her hands, not from fear, but from the effort it took to remain standing. The mate bond pulsed between them like a dying star, and with each word she'd spoken, she'd felt pieces of herself crumble away. I, Sarah Blackwood, accept your rejection, Alpha Damon Silvercrest. The words hung in the air like shattered glass. Custom dictated that the rejected party would collapse, would beg, would break. Sarah did none of these things. Instead, she lifted her chin, her storm-grey eyes meeting his golden ones without flinching, and spoke the words that would haunt him forever. I accept your rejection, Alpha. Then the hall fell silent, until the Alpha King lost control. The first time Sarah Blackwood scented her mate, she was elbow-deep in engine grease beneath a 1967 Mustang. "Hand me the 3/8 socket wrench," she called out to her assistant Marcus, not bothering to look up. The scent hit her then, pine and thunderstorms, leather and something wild that made her wolf surge forward with a desperation that terrified her. "Mate!" She jerked upward so fast she cracked her head on the undercarriage. "Shit!" The wrench clattered from her oil-stained fingers. "Need help down there?" The voice was deep, amused, and coming from directly above her. Sarah rolled out from under the car to find herself staring up at 6 feet 4 inches of pure, devastating male. Golden eyes looked down at her with an expression she couldn't quite read, surprise certainly, but also something that looked unsettlingly like disappointment. Alpha Damon Silvercrest stood in her garage, wearing a custom suit that probably cost more than her entire month's rent, looking completely out of place among her tools and spare parts. He was legendary throughout the Western Territories, the youngest alpha to unite 3 packs, a warrior who'd won the Northern Campaign single-handedly, and according to gossip, the most eligible bachelor in the supernatural world. He was also, apparently, her mate. She started. "Your mate." He finished, his jaw tight. "Yes." Sarah pulled herself to her feet, acutely aware of the grease on her cheeks, her torn jeans, the sports bra visible beneath her tank top. She'd pulled her black hair into a messy bun that morning, and her nails were permanently stained from years of mechanic work. She looked nothing like the elegant she-wolves who usually grace the arms of alphas. The disappointment in his eyes told her he'd noticed. "I wasn't expecting—" He trailed off. "A mechanic?" Sarah supplied, her wolf whimpering at his obvious dismay. "Someone covered in grease, someone who doesn't look like she stepped out of a fashion magazine." "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." She grabbed a rag, wiping her hands with more force than necessary. "Look, Alpha Silvercrest, I know I'm not what you were hoping for. Trust me, I get it. You probably imagined some refined Luna who knows which fork to use at fancy dinners and how to smile prettily at pack politics." His expression hardened. "You don't know what I imagined." "Don't I?" Sarah laughed. But there was no humour in it. "I've been an omega in the pack hierarchy my entire life. I know exactly how alphas look at wolves like me." The mate bond thrummed between them, urging them together, but neither moved. They stood in that garage like 2 fighters in a ring, circling, assessing. "I have responsibilities," Damon said finally. "Expectations. My pack needs a Luna who can—" "Can what? Play the part? Look pretty at ceremonies?" Sarah's wolf snarled, hurt beyond measure. "I run my own business, Alpha. I put myself through school. I may not be sophisticated, but I'm not useless." "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" Damon was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "I need a partner who understands pack politics, someone who's been trained for leadership. Someone who can stand beside me at alliance meetings and negotiations. This isn't about you being a mechanic. It's about you being unprepared for what being Luna of the Crimson Moon Pack requires." Each word landed like a blow. Sarah felt her wolf retreating, wounded. "I see." She turned away, ostensibly to clean her tools, but really to hide the tears threatening to fall. "Then I suppose we have a problem, don't we?" "Sarah, don't!" She held up a hand. Just don't. You've made your position clear, Alpha. You want someone who fits into your world. I respect that, even if it hurts like hell. The mate bond will fade. Eventually, she forced herself to look at him. I won't force myself on someone who sees me as inadequate. I have too much pride for that. Damon's jaw clenched. I didn't say inadequate. You didn't have to say it. It's written all over your face. Sarah picked up her wrench, her hands shaking slightly. You should go, Alpha Silvercrest. I have work to finish. For a moment she thought he might argue. The mate bond screamed at both of them, demanding they stop this madness, demanding they fall into each other's arms the way fate intended. But Damon Silvercrest hadn't become the most powerful alpha in the Western Territories by giving in to demands, even from fate itself. I'll be in touch, he said stiffly. Sarah didn't watch him leave. She crawled back under the Mustang and let the tears fall silently onto the concrete floor, mixing with the oil stains that had been there for years. She didn't know then that this was just the beginning. That their story would be written in rejection and regret, in pride and pain, until the day it all came crashing down in that silent hall. But she would learn. They both would. 3 weeks after their first meeting, Damon showed up at her garage again. This time he wasn't alone. Sarah Blackwood, this is Helena Ashworth, he announced without preamble. She'll be training you. Sarah looked up from the transmission she was rebuilding to find a tall, severe-looking woman standing beside Damon. Helena Ashworth wore pearls and a pencil skirt, and her expression suggested she'd rather be anywhere else. Training me for what, exactly? Sarah wiped her hands, already knowing she wouldn't like the answer. To be my Luna, Damon said, as if it were obvious. I've thought about our situation and I've come up with a solution. You'll undergo intensive training in pack politics, etiquette, diplomacy, and leadership. 6 months should be sufficient. Sarah stared at him. You've got to be kidding. I don't joke about pack business. You want to turn me into someone I'm not. I want to give you the tools you need to succeed, he corrected. The mate bond is strong, Sarah. Fighting it is making us both miserable. This is a compromise. A compromise would be you accepting me as I am, she shot back. This is you trying to mold me into your ideal woman. Helena Ashworth cleared her throat delicately. If I may, Miss Blackwood, many Lunas undergo similar training. It's not personal, it's practical. Alpha Silvercrest's position requires— I know what it requires, Sarah interrupted. I also know what it says about him, that he can't imagine a world where his Luna is a mechanic. Damon's eyes flashed gold. That's not fair. Isn't it? Sarah stood, wiping her hands on her jeans. You took one look at me and decided I wasn't good enough. Now you're offering to fix me. How is that fair? I'm offering you a chance. His voice rose and the alpha command rippled through it, making her wolf want to submit. Sarah fought it, her spine stiffening. Don't! Her voice was deadly quiet. Don't you dare use your alpha voice on me. I may be an omega, but I'm still your mate. I deserve respect. Something flickered across Damon's face, regret maybe, or shame. The command faded. You're right, I'm sorry. But Sarah, please just consider it. Helena is one of the best diplomatic trainers in the territories. 6 months. That's all I'm asking. And what happens in 6 months? Do I get a test? Pass or fail on whether I've successfully erased everything that makes me who I am. That's not what this is about. Then what is it about? She stepped closer, close enough that the mate bond crackled between them like electricity. Tell me the truth, Damon. Are you ashamed of me? He didn't answer immediately, and that silence said everything. Sarah laughed bitterly. That's what I thought. It's complicated, he started. It's really not. She turned away. You want a Luna who looks good on your arm, someone your pack will respect, who other alphas will take seriously, and you think that person isn't me. The pack is skeptical, he admitted quietly. They've heard about you, about us. An omega mate is unusual for an alpha of my standing. They're waiting to see if you can prove yourself worthy. Worthy. The word tasted like ash. And if I can't? If I spend 6 months becoming someone else and still don't measure up to whatever impossible standard you've set? Damon's jaw clenched. Then we'll deal with that when it comes. No, Sarah shook her head. No, I won't do this. I won't spend 6 months being scrutinized and judged and molded into someone's idea of perfect. I'm a damn good mechanic. I run a successful business. I take care of myself and my family. That should be enough. In an ideal world, it would be, Helena spoke up softly. But the political reality of pack leadership is harsh, Miss Blackwood. Alpha Silvercrest has enemies who will exploit any perceived weakness. A Luna who isn't prepared for that scrutiny becomes a liability. So I'm a liability now? Sarah looked at Damon. Is that what I am to you? You're my mate, he said, and for the first time she heard something raw in his voice. Do you think this is easy for me? Fighting the bond every day, lying awake knowing you're out there hurting because of me? Then accept me as I am. I'm trying. He ran a hand through his dark hair, frustration rolling off him in waves. This is me trying, Sarah. Meeting you halfway. I'm not asking you to stop being a mechanic. I'm asking you to learn what you need to know to survive in my world. Is that really so unreasonable? Sarah wanted to say yes. She wanted to tell him to go to hell and walk away with her pride intact. But the mate bond was screaming at her, and underneath his arrogance, she could feel his genuine concern. He wasn't entirely wrong. She knew nothing about pack politics, nothing about diplomacy or leadership. If she became Luna, she would be thrust into a world she didn't understand. But the fact that he thought she needed to change instead of him defending her as she was, that hurt more than anything. 1 month, she said finally. I'll give you 1 month of training. At the end of that month, we have an honest conversation about whether this is working. And if I decide it's not, you let me go. No arguments, no alpha commands. You accept my rejection. Damon's face went pale. Rejection? That's the deal. Take it or leave it. He looked like she'd stabbed him. The mate bond between them twisted, sharp and painful. But after a long moment, he nodded. 1 month. But Sarah, I'll do everything I can to make this work. We'll see, she said quietly. As they left, Helena handed her a thick binder. Your first lesson is tomorrow at 6 a.m. Don't be late. Sarah looked down at the binder. It was labelled Introduction to Pack Hierarchy and Politics, Volume 1. There were 3 more volumes. She had a feeling it was going to be a very long month. The month was hell. Sarah woke at 5 every morning to study pack histories, memorize bloodlines, and learn the intricate dance of supernatural politics. She spent her afternoons in her garage, trying to keep her business running, and her evenings being drilled by Helena on everything from formal dining etiquette to negotiation tactics. She was exhausted. She was frustrated. And she was increasingly certain this would never work. The problem wasn't the information. Sarah had always been a quick study. The problem was Damon himself. He showed up every few days, ostensibly to check on her progress, but really to criticize. Her posture wasn't right. Her word choice was too casual. She smiled too little or too much or not in the right way. Nothing she did was ever quite good enough. The worst part, she could feel through the mate bond that he was fighting himself. Every criticism hurt him to give. Every time he corrected her, she felt his wolf recoil. He hated this as much as she did, but he couldn't stop himself. His need for perfection, his fear of his pack's judgment, was stronger than his desire to simply accept her. On day 28, something inside Sarah snapped. They were at a mock alliance meeting Helena had arranged, with several of Damon's inner circle playing the parts of rival alphas. Sarah was supposed to navigate a complex trade negotiation while maintaining diplomatic relations with 3 different packs, each with their own agendas and grudges. She'd been doing well, or so she thought. She'd identified the key players, found common ground, and was close to reaching an agreement that would benefit everyone. Then Damon interrupted. Stop. His voice cut through the room like a blade. This isn't working. Sarah froze mid-sentence. What? You're being too accommodating. Alpha Marcus is playing you, can't you see that? He's acting friendly while slowly backing you into a corner where you'll have to give up territory rights. I know that, Sarah said carefully, aware of everyone watching. I was about to counter with, you've already lost the room. Look at them. They don't respect you. The words hit like a physical blow. Sarah looked around at Damon's inner circle, his beta, his third, his pack advisors. Their expressions were carefully neutral, but she could read the truth in their eyes. Damon was right. They saw her as an omega playing dress-up, a mechanic who didn't belong in their world. Maybe they would respect me if their alpha did, she said quietly. The room went dead silent. Damon's eyes flashed. That's not fair. Isn't it? Sarah stood, her hands shaking. I've spent a month doing everything you asked, learning, studying, practicing, and it's never enough. Nothing I do is ever enough for you. I'm trying to help you. No, you're trying to prove I can't do this. The words burst out of her. Months of hurt and frustration finally breaking free. Every session, every lesson, every test, you're looking for me to fail. You want me to fail so you can justify rejecting me. That's not true. But his voice lacked conviction. Then tell me, Sarah stepped toward him, her storm-grey eyes blazing. When was the last time you told me I did something right? When was the last time you looked at me with anything other than disappointment? Damon opened his mouth, then closed it. The silence stretched. That's what I thought. Sarah pulled off the elegant jacket Helena had insisted she wear. I'm done, Damon. I'm done trying to become someone I'm not for a mate who can't see my value. Sarah, our month is up in 2 days. Consider this me ending it early. She started walking toward the door. You're giving up? His voice was sharp, accusatory. Just like that? She spun around. No, you gave up. You gave up the moment you looked at me in that garage and decided I wasn't good enough. You gave up when you chose your pack's approval over your mate. I'm not giving up. I'm refusing to waste another second begging for scraps of acceptance from someone who should love me unconditionally. Love doesn't mean accepting mediocrity. The words hung in the air. Sarah felt something inside her chest crack and shatter. Mediocrity, she repeated softly. That's what you think I am. Damon's face went white as he realized what he'd said. Sarah, I didn't mean, yes, you did. Her voice was eerily calm now, the kind of calm that comes after the storm has already destroyed everything. You meant every word, and you know what? I'm glad you finally said it out loud. Because now I know exactly where I stand. Please, let me explain. There's nothing to explain. Sarah looked around the room at his inner circle, at Helena, who was watching with something like pity in her eyes, at the life she'd been trying so desperately to fit into. I, Sarah Blackwood, reject you, Damon Silvercrest, as my mate. The rejection hit the bond like a sledgehammer. Damon staggered, his hand going to his chest. Around them, his inner circle gasped. Helena actually stepped back, shocked. You didn't reject an alpha. It just wasn't done. The Omega accepted the rejection, not the other way around. It was pack law, tradition, the natural order of things. Sarah had just shattered that order. No, Damon gasped. No, you can't. You have to let me. Accept it or don't. I don't care anymore. Sarah's voice was steady even as tears streamed down her face. But I'm done being your project, your disappointment, your mediocrity. I deserve better than this. She walked out. Behind her she heard Damon roar, a sound of pure animalistic rage and grief. The bond writhed between them, screaming, dying. She kept walking. Sarah didn't go back to her garage. She couldn't face the familiar space where everything had begun. Instead, she drove to her older brother's house on the outskirts of the territory and collapsed on his couch. He called you mediocre. Zane Blackwood's voice was dangerously quiet. Her brother was a delta in their original pack, not powerful enough to challenge an alpha, but strong enough to do serious damage if motivated. Right now, he looked very motivated. Among other things, Sarah mumbled into a pillow. The rejection had been official for 3 hours, and she felt like she was dying. The mate bond was severing slowly, painfully, like a rope being cut one fibre at a time. Every breath hurt. Every heartbeat felt wrong. I'm going to kill him. Get in line. Their sister Maya sat beside Sarah, running fingers through her hair the way she had when they were children. Actually, no. I'm going to let his reputation kill him. Do you know what the packs are saying? Sarah didn't want to know, but Maya continued anyway. An alpha rejecting his mate is one thing. It's happened before, usually when the mate is deemed truly unsuitable. But an omega rejecting an alpha? And not just any alpha, but Damon Silvercrest. Maya's grin was feral. You've made him look weak, Sarah. Vulnerable. Like he couldn't even keep his own mate. I didn't do it for revenge, Sarah protested weakly. Maybe not, but you're getting it anyway. Zane pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages. 3 neighbouring alphas have already reached out to express concern about the Crimson Moon Pack's stability. That's diplomatic speak for "we smell blood in the water." Sarah closed her eyes. She hadn't thought about the political implications. She'd just been so tired, so hurt, so done with being judged and found wanting. I didn't mean to— Don't. Maya's voice was fierce. Don't you dare apologise. He did this to himself. You offered him something precious, a true mate bond, and he threw it away because you weren't polished enough for his precious pack. He was trying, Sarah found herself defending him even now, in his own way. He was scared of his pack's judgment. Then he should have defended you, Zane said flatly. That's what an alpha does for his Luna. He stands between her and the world. He makes the pack accept her, not the other way around. Damon Silvercrest failed you in the most fundamental way possible. Sarah knew he was right, but it didn't make the pain any easier. Her phone buzzed, then again, and again. Don't look at it, Maya warned. Sarah looked anyway. 43 missed calls from Damon. 72 texts. The most recent one just said, "Please." Her thumb hovered over the message. Part of her, the part that still felt the dying mate bond, wanted to respond, wanted to give him one more chance to say the right thing, to finally see her value. She deleted the message thread and turned off her phone. Good girl, Maya approved. Now, here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay here for a few days. Rest. Heal. Let that bond sever completely. And then you're going to go back to your garage and your life, and you're going to be fine. I don't feel fine. You will. Eventually. Zane sat on her other side, so she was sandwiched between her siblings. And if he shows up here, I'll break his nose. Despite everything, Sarah smiled. He's an alpha, Zane. You'd lose. Maybe. But it would feel good for the 3 seconds before he killed me. They sat there together, the 3 Blackwood siblings, while outside the phone calls kept coming and the pack gossip spread like wildfire, and Damon Silvercrest began to understand exactly what he'd lost. Damon Silvercrest had never felt pain like this. The mate bond severance was agony, a constant, gnawing ache in his chest that no amount of whiskey could numb. But worse than the physical pain was the realization of what he'd done. Mediocrity. He'd called his mate, his fierce, brilliant, proud mate, mediocre. You're an idiot, his beta Marcus said bluntly. They were in Damon's office, and Marcus was watching his alpha drink himself toward oblivion with a mixture of concern and exasperation. An absolute colossal idiot. I know. Do you? Because I'm not sure you do. Marcus grabbed the whiskey bottle. She was perfect for you. She wasn't ready. She was ready to stand by your side and face whatever came. That's all a Luna needs to be, loyal and brave. Everything else can be learned. But you were so obsessed with appearances, so terrified of what the other packs would think, that you destroyed the best thing that ever happened to you. Damon wanted to argue, but the words stuck in his throat, because Marcus was right. He'd spent weeks watching Sarah struggle through lessons she should never have needed, trying to mold herself into something she wasn't. And not once had he simply told her she was enough. Not once had he stood in front of his inner circle and said, "This is my mate, and if you can't respect her, you can leave." He'd been a coward. "The pack is talking," Marcus continued. "They say she rejected you in front of everyone, that you called her mediocre, that you couldn't keep your own mate. I know what they're saying." "And do you know what the other packs are saying?" Alpha Chen called, Alpha Rodriguez, Alpha Nightshade, all of them offering support during this difficult time. Marcus's tone made it clear what that really meant. They think you're weak now, vulnerable. Alpha Nightshade actually laughed when he suggested we might need help maintaining order. Damon's wolf snarled. The idea of another alpha encroaching on his territory, questioning his strength, it should have filled him with rage. Instead, he just felt empty. "Let them come," he said tiredly. "Let them—" Marcus stared. "Damon, what's wrong with you? A month ago, you would have ripped apart anyone who questioned your authority. Now you're just giving up." "She gave up on me. On us." The words tasted bitter, and she was right to do it. "Then fight for her." Marcus leaned forward. "Go to her, apologize, grovel, do whatever it takes to get her back. She rejected me. So, make her unreject you. Prove you've changed. Show her you're worthy of a second chance." Damon laughed bitterly. "How do I prove that? How do I show her I've changed when I spent weeks proving exactly who I am? Someone who values politics over people, appearance over authenticity, pack opinion over mate bonds. By being different, by being better," Marcus stood. "Look, I'm going to say this once, and then I'm going to let you wallow in your self-pity. Sarah Blackwood walked away from you not because she didn't care, but because she cared too much to accept scraps. She wanted all of you, your respect, your pride, your unwavering support, and you couldn't give that. But if you can figure out how to be the mate she deserves, she might listen. She blocked my number. Then go to her in person, camp outside her garage, send flowers. Skywrite an apology. I don't care. But do something, because this—" Marcus gestured at the whiskey bottles, the dark circles under Damon's eyes, the general aura of despair. "This isn't the alpha I pledged my loyalty to. This is a shadow, and if you don't snap out of it soon, you're going to lose more than just your mate. You're going to lose your pack." Marcus left, slamming the door behind him. Damon sat alone in the dark, Marcus's words echoing in his head. He should go to her, apologize, fight for what they could have been. But the shame was overwhelming. How did you apologize for making someone feel worthless? How did you come back from calling your soulmate mediocre? His phone buzzed. Another alpha, this one from the Eastern Territories, offering assistance. They were circling like sharks. Damon had built his reputation on strength, on decisiveness, on never showing weakness. And in one moment of blind fear and pride, he'd shattered it all. He'd shattered everything. 2 weeks after the rejection, Sarah went back to work. Her garage had survived without her. Marcus, her assistant, had kept things running, but there was a backlog of repairs and customers who'd been waiting. Throwing herself into work felt good. It felt normal. It felt like the life she'd had before a certain arrogant alpha had walked in and turned everything upside down. "There's someone here to see you," Marcus called out one afternoon. Sarah rolled out from under a pickup truck, expecting another customer. Instead, she found Helena Ashworth standing in her garage, looking significantly less put together than usual. The older woman's hair was slightly mussed, and her eyes were red-rimmed. "Miss Blackwood, may I have a moment?" Sarah wanted to say no, wanted to tell her to leave and never come back, but something in Helena's expression made her pause. "5 minutes," she said finally. They sat in Sarah's tiny office, surrounded by invoices and car parts catalogues. Helena looked around with interest, taking in the framed photos of Sarah with her first restored car, the certificates from mechanic school, the small trophies from local racing competitions. "I came to apologize," Helena said quietly, "and to tell you that you were right." Sarah blinked. "I was right about what?" "Everything. Helena folded her hands in her lap. I've trained dozens of Lunas over the years. Most of them needed help, genuinely needed to learn pack politics and diplomacy. But you? You didn't need training to be Luna. You needed an alpha who would stand beside you and let you be yourself. Why are you telling me this? Because I watched him break you down, piece by piece, and I said nothing. Helena's voice cracked. I told myself it was necessary, that you needed to learn, that I was helping, but I wasn't. I was complicit in making you feel inadequate, and I'm ashamed of that. Sarah didn't know what to say. I also wanted you to know, Helena continued, that the Crimson Moon Pack is falling apart without you. That's not my problem anymore, isn't it? Helena leaned forward. Damon hasn't left his house in a week. Marcus is trying to handle pack business, but challenges are coming in from neighbouring alphas. There are rumours of a coup attempt from within. Everything is unravelling. Good, Sarah said harshly. Maybe he'll learn that strength isn't about appearances. It's about the bonds you forge and the people you protect. He's learned that. Too late. But he's learned it. Helena pulled out an envelope. He asked me to give you this. I don't know what it says, but he was crying when he wrote it. Sarah stared at the envelope like it might bite her. Part of her wanted to throw it away unread. But a larger part, the part that still felt the ghost of their bond, couldn't resist. She took it. Helena stood. I don't expect forgiveness, Miss Blackwood. I just wanted you to know that you were never the problem. You were always enough, more than enough. She paused at the door. For what it's worth, I think you would have been the best Luna the Western Territories ever saw. Not despite being a mechanic, but because of it. Because you understand real work, real struggle. Because you don't put on airs. The pack would have loved you, given the chance. After she left, Sarah sat alone with the envelope for a long time. Finally, she opened it. Sarah, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect you to care, but I need to write it anyway because if I don't, I'll go mad from the things left unsaid. You were right. About everything. I was scared. Not of you being unsuitable. Scared of my own pack's judgment if they didn't immediately accept you. I was so terrified of appearing weak that I made the weakest choice possible. I rejected the gift of a true mate because she didn't fit my shallow expectations. You were never mediocre. I'm the mediocre one. A true alpha would have seen your worth immediately, the strength in your independence, the fierce intelligence in your eyes, the pride that refuses to bow even in the face of rejection. A true alpha would have taken your hand and told his pack that they would learn to respect you or find themselves packless. I wasn't that alpha. I was too busy worrying about bloodlines and politics and maintaining an image. I forgot that real power doesn't come from intimidation or perfect appearances. It comes from the bonds we build and the people we protect. You didn't need training. I needed perspective. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I hurt you in ways that might never heal. But I need you to know that losing you has taught me more than 100 political victories ever could. You made me want to be better. You made me question everything I thought I knew about strength and leadership, and I ruined it because I was a coward. I won't contact you again. You've made your choice, and I respect it. I just needed you to know that you were never, ever the problem. You were the solution I was too blind to see. I hope you find someone worthy of you someday, someone who sees your grease-stained hands as beautiful, someone who watches you rebuild an engine and falls in love with your capability, someone who stands beside you proudly, no matter who's watching. I'm sorry I couldn't be that person. Damon. Sarah read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully and put it in her desk drawer. She didn't cry. She'd cried enough. But that night, lying alone in her bed, she found herself thinking about golden eyes and a mate bond that had never quite severed. Not completely. She found herself wondering if people could really change, or if she was just hoping for a miracle that would never come. She fell asleep without answers, the ghost of a bond humming quietly in her chest like a song she couldn't quite forget. The Alliance Summit was held twice a year, bringing together all the major alphas of the Western Territories to discuss trade agreements, border disputes, and pack law. It was the most important political event in the supernatural calendar, and attendance was mandatory for all ruling alphas. Sarah had no intention of going. She wasn't Luna of anything, just a mechanic with a garage and a slowly healing heart. The summit had nothing to do with her. Until her brother called. "Damon's going to be challenged," Zane said without preamble. Sarah's hands tightened on the wrench she was holding. "That's not my problem. Alpha Nightshade is bringing a formal challenge. To the death, Sarah. He's claiming that Damon's inability to maintain his mate bond proves he's unfit to lead. Half the Western alphas are backing him." Despite herself, despite everything, Sarah felt her heart drop. To the death? Damon's refusing to defend himself properly. Marcus says he's barely eating, barely sleeping. He's going through the motions, but there's no fight in him anymore. Zane paused. He's given up. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because whether you like it or not, you're the reason he's falling apart, and you're the only one who can save him. He doesn't deserve—" "Maybe not," Zane interrupted. "But do hundreds of innocent pack members deserve to suffer under Alpha Nightshade's rule? Because that's what will happen if Damon loses. Nightshade is brutal, Sarah. His pack lives in fear. If he takes over Crimson Moon..." Sarah closed her eyes. She didn't owe Damon anything. He'd made his choices, and now he was facing the consequences. It wasn't her job to save him from his own mistakes, but innocents would suffer. Children, families, people who had nothing to do with their failed mate bond. "When is the challenge?" 3 days at the Summit Hall. Zane's voice softened. "I'm not asking you to forgive him, Sarah. I'm asking you to consider what's right." After she hung up, Sarah sat in her garage for a long time, staring at nothing. She thought about Damon's letter, still locked in her desk drawer. She thought about golden eyes filled with regret. She thought about the mate bond that had never quite died, no matter how much she'd tried to sever it. Most of all, she thought about the kind of person she wanted to be. 3 days later, she drove to the summit. The grand hall of the Alliance Summit was packed. Every major alpha in the Western Territories was present, along with their betas, advisors, and key pack members. The air thrummed with anticipation and barely suppressed violence. Sarah slipped in through a side entrance, keeping to the shadows. She wore simple jeans and a leather jacket, not the elegant gowns expected at these events. She wasn't here as anyone's Luna. She was here as herself. On the main floor, Damon stood across from Alpha Nightshade. The contrast between them was stark. Nightshade was massive, easily 6.5 feet of pure muscle, with scars crisscrossing his arms and a cruel smile on his face. He looked eager for the fight. Damon looked like he'd already lost. The alpha she remembered had been proud, commanding, intimidating in his power. This Damon was hollow-eyed and gaunt, his shoulders slumped in defeat. He looked like someone going through the motions, waiting for the end. "The challenge is issued," the Summit Master declared. He was an ancient wolf, neutral in pack politics, who presided over all formal challenges. Alpha Nightshade of the Shadow Ridge Pack challenges Alpha Damon Silvercrest of the Crimson Moon Pack for leadership and territory. The challenge is to the death or submission. Does the challenged accept? "I accept," Damon said quietly. "Then speak your defenses, if you have any." This was the moment when an alpha would typically rally support, call upon allies, remind everyone of his strength and achievements. Damon said nothing. Alpha Nightshade laughed. "Look at him. Broken by a rejected mate. An Omega, no less. He couldn't even keep a lowborn she-wolf in line, and you expect him to lead a pack? To protect territory?" He addressed the room now, playing to the audience. "I offer the Crimson Moon Pack real leadership. Strength. Someone who won't crumble because of a failed romance." Several alphas murmured in agreement. Sarah felt rage building in her chest. "This is the problem with the modern packs," Nightshade continued. "Soft, weak, too concerned with feelings and mate bonds. In the old days, alphas took what they wanted and ruled with iron fists. Damon Silvercrest represents everything wrong with our kind, placing personal weakness above pack strength. Enough speeches, the Summit Master said. Prepare for— Wait, Sarah's voice rang out across the hall. Every head turned. The crowd parted as she walked forward, and she heard the whispers start immediately. That's her. The rejected mate. What is she doing here? Sarah ignored them all, her eyes locked on Damon. His face had gone white, and for the first time since she'd arrived, she saw something flicker in his expression. Hope, fear, disbelief, all tangled together. This challenge is based on false premises, Sarah announced, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Alpha Nightshade claims that Damon couldn't maintain his mate bond. That's not accurate. The Summit Master frowned. Miss Blackwood, while we appreciate your testimony, the rejection was witnessed by me. I was the one who rejected him. Sarah turned to face the assembled alphas. Not because he was weak, but because he was too strong. Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. Explain, the Summit Master commanded. Sarah took a breath. This was it. The moment that would either save Damon or condemn them both. Alpha Silvercrest didn't reject me because I was unsuitable. He questioned whether I was ready for the political complexities of pack leadership. And he was right to question that. I knew nothing about alliance politics, nothing about diplomacy, nothing about the intricate web of power and tradition that governs our world. She saw Nightshade's expression darken, saw several other alphas lean forward with interest. But instead of just accepting me as I was, he tried to help me learn. He arranged training, mentorship, opportunities to understand what being Luna would require. Was his approach perfect? No. Did he make mistakes? Absolutely. But his instinct wasn't to simply take what fate gave him. It was to ensure his pack would be well served by their Luna. That's not strength, Nightshade scoffed. That's thinking beyond himself, Sarah cut him off, her voice sharp. Which is more than I can say for an alpha who rules through fear and violence. I rejected Damon not because he failed to keep me, but because I was too proud to accept help, too stubborn to admit I had things to learn. I saw his attempts to prepare me for leadership as criticism, when really, they were gifts. She finally looked directly at Damon. His eyes were wide, golden and burning with an intensity that made her breath catch. I was wrong, she said softly, though her voice carried through the silent hall. And I'm here to formally withdraw my rejection. Gasps echoed through the chamber. The rejection was accepted, Nightshade protested. The bond was severed. You can't just— The bond was never fully severed, Sarah interrupted. Check the records. A true mate bond, once formed, can only be completely destroyed by death. Ours was damaged, weakened, but never broken. Which means, legally I'm still his mate. And as his mate, I have the right to stand in this challenge. The Summit Master consulted with his advisors, their voices low and urgent. Finally, he nodded. She's correct. The bond still exists, albeit in a damaged state. By law, she can participate in the defense. This is absurd, Nightshade snarled. She's not even what? Sarah's voice was deadly quiet. Not even worthy, not even strong enough, not even a proper Luna. She stepped forward, and several people actually backed away from the fury in her eyes. I am Sarah Blackwood. I built a business from nothing. I put myself through school while working 3 jobs. I've survived in a world that told me I'd never amount to anything because I was born Omega. And I'm here to tell you that Damon Silvercrest is twice the alpha you'll ever be, Nightshade, because he knows strength isn't just about domination. It's about growth, adaptation, and admitting when you're wrong. She turned to the Summit Master. I formally request the right to speak on behalf of my mate before this challenge proceeds. Granted, he said, looking almost amused. Sarah faced the assembled alphas. Her heart was pounding, her palms sweating, but her voice remained steady. This was it. Everything Helena had tried to teach her, everything she'd resisted learning, was about to be put to use. You want to know what makes a strong alpha? Look at his pack. The Crimson Moon Pack has the lowest poverty rate in the Western Territories. Their children have the highest education rates. Their elderly are cared for. Their warriors are loyal not out of fear but out of genuine respect. That's Damon's legacy. She pointed at Nightshade. His pack lives in terror. His warriors defect at the first opportunity. His territory is held together by violence and intimidation. If he takes over Crimson Moon, it will be through the same brutality. Is that really what this alliance wants to reward? Several alphas were nodding now. She'd researched them during her month of training, knew their values, their priorities. She was speaking their language. Alpha Silvercrest made mistakes in his personal life. He let fear guide him when he should have let his heart lead. But that's a private matter between mates, not grounds for territorial challenge. If we allow alphas to be challenged every time they have relationship problems, none of you will be safe. That hit home. She could see it in their faces. The realization that if Damon could be challenged for this, so could they. The real question, Sarah continued, is whether an alpha who admits his mistakes and tries to learn from them is weaker than an alpha who never admits fault at all. I'd argue that the ability to grow, to change, to recognize one's own failings, that's the truest strength there is. The hall was completely silent now. So, yes, Sarah said quietly, I rejected him, and I was wrong to do so. Not because I wasn't worthy of better treatment, but because I didn't give him the chance to prove he could be better. And he has been. In the weeks since our rejection, he's been quietly reforming pack laws to give Omegas more rights. He's established support systems for wolves who don't fit traditional hierarchies. He's been building the kind of pack where someone like me, someone who started with nothing, could thrive. She finally turned back to Damon, whose face was streaked with tears he wasn't bothering to hide. I was too proud to see what you were really doing, she said softly. Too hurt to understand that growth is painful. Too scared to admit I needed help. But I'm not too proud anymore. And I'm not too scared. So I'm here to stand with you if you'll have me. Not as some polished, perfect Luna, but as exactly who I am. Grease stains and all. The hall erupted. Alphas were arguing, debating, some supporting Nightshade's challenge and others withdrawing their support. The summit master banged his gavel repeatedly, trying to restore order. Through it all, Damon stood frozen, staring at Sarah like she'd just performed a miracle. Then he moved. 3 long strides brought him to her, and suddenly his arms were around her, crushing her against his chest. She felt the mate bond surge back to life, stronger than before, healing and whole and perfect. I'm sorry, he whispered into her hair. I'm so sorry. You were always enough, more than enough. I was the one who wasn't worthy. We were both idiots, she whispered back, but we can be better idiots together. He laughed, the sound broken and beautiful. Order! The summit master's voice cut through the chaos. When the hall finally quieted, he looked at them with something approaching respect. Alpha Silvercrest, do you accept your mate's defense? With everything I am, Damon said, still holding Sarah close. And do you, Sarah Blackwood, formally rescind your rejection? I do. Then the mate bond is restored. The summit master turned to Nightshade, whose face was purple with rage. Alpha Nightshade, your challenge was based on the premise that Alpha Silvercrest's rejection proved weakness. That premise is now void. However, if you wish to proceed with a standard territorial challenge, you may do so. For a long moment, Nightshade looked like he might do exactly that. Then he looked around the hall at the other alphas, most of whom were now watching him with suspicion rather than support. Sarah's speech had worked. They saw him for what he was, a bully looking for an excuse to expand his territory. This isn't over, Nightshade snarled, but he stepped back, conceding. A challenge without support from the Alliance was suicide, and he knew it. The summit master nodded. Challenge withdrawn. This matter is concluded. He looked at Sarah and Damon, still wrapped in each other's arms. Though I suspect the real battle is just beginning. He wasn't wrong. The drive back to Crimson Moon territory was quiet. Damon and Sarah sat in his car, hands intertwined, neither quite sure what to say now that the adrenaline had faded. I can't believe you came, Damon said finally. After everything I did. After everything we both did, Sarah corrected. I was so busy being hurt that I couldn't see you were struggling too. You weren't trying to change me out of malice. You were just scared. Terrified, he admitted. My father always said an alpha is only as strong as his weakest perceived vulnerability. I thought if the pack saw you as unsuitable, they'd see me as weak. I forgot that real strength is standing by the people you love, not hiding them away. Sarah squeezed his hand. Helena told me the pack was falling apart. They weren't falling apart, I was. Damon's voice was raw. Without you, nothing mattered. The politics, the power, the respect, it all felt hollow. I kept going through the motions because I had to, but every day was torture. Marcus had to literally drag me to the summit. I'm here now. Are you? He looked at her, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen him. Really here. Because Sarah, I meant what I wrote in that letter. You deserve someone who sees your worth immediately, someone who doesn't need to lose you to appreciate you. Maybe, Sarah said, but I don't want someone perfect. I want someone real, someone who makes mistakes and learns from them, someone who isn't afraid to grow. She turned to face him fully. That's you, Damon. You're not the same alpha who walked into my garage 3 months ago. You've changed. And so have I. How have you changed? She considered this. I'm not as afraid anymore. Of judgment, of being seen as less than, of needing help. That month of training? It was hell, but it also taught me things I needed to know. Not because I wasn't good enough before, but because leadership requires skills. And I didn't have all of them yet. I was too proud to admit that. You were perfect, Damon insisted. No, I wasn't. Neither were you. But we can be perfect together. Perfectly imperfect. She smiled. Besides, you've apparently been reforming Omega rights in your pack. That's exactly the kind of alpha I wanted you to be. He looked embarrassed. It wasn't enough. Wasn't even close to enough. But I kept thinking about what you said. About being judged as less than your whole life. It wasn't right. None of it was right. So I started changing things. Slowly, but changing them. Tell me. As they drove through the night, Damon told her about the new laws he'd implemented. Omegas could now own property. They had voting rights in pack decisions. They could challenge for rank based on skill rather than birth. It wasn't revolutionary, but it was progress. The traditional wolves hate it, he admitted. 3 families have already left for other packs. But most of the pack supports it, especially the younger generation. They've been waiting for change. You're going to be a great alpha, Sarah said softly. We're going to be great, he corrected, if you still want this. Want us. Because, Sarah, I need you to know I will never, ever make you feel inadequate again. I will stand beside you proudly, whether you're in a ball gown or covered in engine grease. You're my mate, my Luna, my equal. And anyone who has a problem with that can challenge me themselves. The fierceness in his voice made her wolf purr. I want this, she confirmed, but Damon, I need you to understand something too. I'm not going to stop being a mechanic. My garage is important to me. It's who I am. I know. I wouldn't want you to stop. He raised their joined hands, kissing her grease-stained knuckles. I was thinking, what if we built a garage on pack lands? A community space where pack members could learn mechanic skills, where you could teach them. You could still run your private business, but also, I don't know. Bring what you love into our world. Sarah stared at him. You'd do that. I'd do anything for you. I'm just sorry it took losing you to figure that out. They pulled up to the pack house as dawn was breaking. The building was massive, intimidating, everything Sarah had imagined and feared. But Damon's hand in hers made it less scary. "Ready?" he asked. "No," she admitted, "but let's do it anyway." The pack was waiting. The pack house's main hall was full. Every pack member who could attend was there, from the oldest elder to the youngest pup. They stood in ranked formation, warriors in front, followed by craftsmen, teachers, and caregivers, with omegas at the back. Sarah saw the division immediately, saw how some wolves stood proud while others hunched their shoulders, preparing for judgment. She made a decision. Instead of walking to the front where Damon stood on the raised platform, she walked to the back, to the omegas. A murmur rippled through the crowd. "Hi," she said to a young woman who looked terrified. "I'm Sarah. What's your name?" Maria," the woman stammered. "Luna, you shouldn't." "I'm exactly where I should be," Sarah said firmly. She looked at the other omegas, maybe 20 of them, all looking shocked. "I was born omega. Did you know that?" They shook their heads. "My parents were laborers. I grew up in the poorest part of our territory. I learned to fix cars because it was the only job I could get that paid enough to survive." She smiled at their stunned faces. "Being omega doesn't mean being less. It means we've had to fight harder for everything, and that makes us stronger than they realize." She turned to address the whole pack now, her voice carrying. "I know what some of you are thinking. How can an omega be Luna? What does a mechanic know about leadership? Why should you follow someone who doesn't come from a prestigious bloodline?" The hall was dead silent. "Here's my answer. I don't know everything about being Luna. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to need help and guidance. But I do know about hard work. I know about survival. I know what it's like to be underestimated and overlooked. And I promise you this, I will fight for every single one of you, regardless of rank or bloodline, because that's what a real Luna does." She walked forward now through the ranks, meeting eyes as she went. "I'm not here to be a perfect, polished figurehead. I'm here to get my hands dirty, to work alongside you, to build something better than what we had before." She reached the front, standing beside Damon. "Your alpha has started that work. Now I'm here to help finish it." Damon took her hand, his pride obvious. "This is Sarah Blackwood, my mate, and your Luna. Anyone who disrespects her disrespects me. Anyone who questions her authority questions mine. She stands equal to me in all things." An older wolf stepped forward, one of the elders by his bearing. "What if we believe the old ways are best, that omegas should know their place? Then you're free to leave," Damon said bluntly. "The Crimson Moon Pack is changing. We're building something new, a pack where strength is measured by character, not birth. Where leadership is earned, not inherited. If that doesn't appeal to you, I won't stop you from seeking another pack." The elder's face darkened. "You'd cast out those who built this pack?" "I'd invite those who'll build our future to stay," Sarah interjected. "Look, I understand change is scary. You've lived your whole lives under certain rules, certain hierarchies. Tearing that down feels like chaos. But what if the new way is better? What if releasing the potential in every pack member, regardless of Omega or Alpha born, makes us stronger?" "Pretty words," another voice called out. "But can you back them up?" "Try me," Sarah challenged. "I'm here. I'm not hiding in this house wearing fancy dresses and hosting tea parties. I'm going to be in the Packlands, working, learning, proving myself every single day. Judge me by my actions, not my bloodline." There was a long pause. Then, surprisingly, it was Maria, the scared Omega from the back, who stepped forward. "I believe her," Maria said quietly. "Alpha Damon has already changed our lives. We can own homes now. We can vote. My daughter can go to school with the Alpha-born children. If Luna Sarah says she'll fight for us, I believe her." One by one, other Omegas stepped forward, pledging their support. Then some of the younger warriors. Then craftsmen and teachers, until more than half the pack had declared for their new Luna. The elders looked furious, but they were outnumbered. "This isn't over," one of them muttered, stalking out. Damon watched them go without concern. "Let them leave if they want. We'll be stronger without them." But Sarah felt uneasy. She'd made enemies today, powerful traditional enemies who wouldn't simply accept change. Marcus approached, grinning. "Well, Luna." That was quite the entrance. "Was it too much?" Sarah asked nervously. "It was perfect. You showed strength without arrogance, humility without weakness. The pack needs to see you as real, not as some untouchable figure. You gave them that." Over the next weeks, Sarah threw herself into pack life with the same intensity she'd brought to building her business. She met with every family, learned every name, understood every struggle. She worked alongside the construction crew building her new garage. She trained with the warriors, getting her ass kicked but earning their respect by never giving up. She studied pack law with the advisors, asking questions and offering perspectives they'd never considered. She wasn't a perfect Luna. She swore too much during training. She showed up to formal dinners, with grease under her nails. She laughed too loud and hugged too freely, and treated everyone from the highest-ranked Beta to the lowest-ranked Omega with the same casual warmth. The pack loved her for it. But not everyone did. The elders who'd left hadn't gone far. They'd settled in neutral territory just outside Crimson Moon borders, and they were gathering support. "They're calling it the traditionalist movement," Marcus reported during a strategy meeting. "They're reaching out to other packs, trying to build a coalition against what they're calling dangerous progressive ideology." Sarah, Damon, and Marcus sat in the Alpha's office, reviewing intelligence reports. It had been 2 months since Sarah had returned, and while things were going well internally, external pressure was mounting. "How many packs have joined them?" Damon asked. 3 so far." "All smaller packs with older leadership. But they're making noise, claiming that your reforms will destroy traditional pack structure. They're particularly focused on the Omega rights changes." Sarah felt a familiar anger rising. "Of course they are. Can't have the people at the bottom realizing they don't have to stay there." "The problem," Marcus continued, "is that they're framing this as a stability issue, claiming that disrupting hierarchy leads to chaos, that packs need clear structure to function. And some alphas are listening." "Let them listen," Damon said. "We're not backing down on reforms." "There's something else," Marcus hesitated. "They're specifically targeting Sarah, saying that an Omega Luna is an abomination, that the moon goddess wouldn't pair an alpha with someone so far below his rank. They're claiming the mate bond is fake, that you're being manipulated." Sarah laughed bitterly. "Of course they are. Can't accept that maybe the moon goddess doesn't care about their precious hierarchy." "It gets worse," Marcus said. "They're planning to petition the High Council for a formal review of your leadership, Damon. If enough alphas sign on, the council could force a territory-wide vote of confidence." Damon's expression darkened. The High Council hasn't intervened in territorial governance in 50 years. "Exactly. Which means if they do intervene now, it's a huge deal. It would undermine your authority completely." Sarah stood, pacing. "So what do? We can't back down on reforms. That would betray everyone who's counting on us. But if we push forward, we risk council intervention." "We need allies," Damon decided. "Other progressive alphas who'll stand with us. Marcus, reach out to Alpha Chen, Alpha Rodriguez, and Alpha Moonshadow. They've all implemented similar reforms in their packs. See if they'll commit to public support." "On it," Marcus said, leaving quickly. Alone with Damon, Sarah felt the weight of what they were facing. "Are you scared?" she asked quietly. "Terrified," he admitted. "Not of losing power, of failing the wolves who trusted us. Maria and the others, they believed in us. If this goes wrong—" "It won't." Sarah moved to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "We're right, Damon. Hierarchies based on birth are wrong. Limiting wolves based on rank is wrong. Even if we lose everything fighting for this, we'll be on the right side of history." He kissed her forehead. "When did you become so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just needed to listen." He laughed, then sobered. Sarah, if things get really bad, if the council forces a choice between you and my alpha position, don't, she stopped him. We're not there yet. And we won't be, because we're going to fight like hell to make sure it doesn't come to that. But even as she said it, Sarah felt a chill of premonition. The traditionalists weren't going to give up easily. And if they were specifically targeting her, she pushed the thought away. They'd faced impossible odds before. They'd face them again. Together. The High Council's summons arrived on a Tuesday. Damon was required to appear before them in 3 weeks to address concerns about destabilizing reforms and questionable leadership decisions. The letter was formal, cold, and made it clear that this wasn't a request. They're really doing this, Sarah said, reading over his shoulder. They don't have a choice. 12 alphas signed the petition, enough to trigger a mandatory review. Damon set the letter down carefully, his jaw tight. This is going to get ugly. Then we prepare. Sarah's mind was already racing. We need documentation of every reform, evidence of improved pack welfare, testimonials from pack members. We need to show that our way works. It's not about what works, Damon said grimly. It's about power and tradition. The High Council is made up of the oldest, most traditional wolves in existence. They're not going to care that our Omegas are happier. They're going to care that we disrupted the natural order. Then we change their minds. Sarah, I'm serious. She grabbed his hands. We went into that summit hall and changed minds. We can do it again. We just need the right approach. Over the next weeks, they prepared obsessively. Sarah compiled data showing decreased crime rates, increased pack productivity, higher satisfaction scores. She gathered testimonials from pack members, not just Omegas, but wolves from every rank who'd benefited from the changes. Marcus worked his network, securing commitments from allied alphas to speak on their behalf. Helena Ashworth, surprisingly, volunteered to testify about the value of non-traditional lunars. Even some of the younger council members sent quiet messages of support. But the traditionalists were preparing too. They've got their own testimonials, Marcus reported one evening. Former pack members claiming the reforms led to chaos and disrespect. They're painting a picture of a pack falling apart. Our pack is thriving, Sarah protested. Facts don't matter to people who've already made up their minds. They're going to see what they want to see. The night before they were set to leave for the council hall, Sarah couldn't sleep. She stood on the balcony of their private quarters, staring out at packlands that had become her home. Second thoughts? Damon joined her, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. About us? Never. About this fight? She sighed. I keep thinking, what if I'm the problem? What if you'd be better off with a traditional lunar, someone they'd accept without question? Sarah. No, listen. I love you. I love this pack. But if my being here is what's causing all this trouble, maybe. He turned her to face him, his hands firm on her shoulders. Don't. Don't you dare suggest leaving. You're not the problem. They are. And even if the council rules against us, even if we lose everything, I'm not losing you again. Do you understand? But the pack will follow us wherever we go, the wolves who matter anyway. His voice softened. Sarah, you taught me that leadership isn't about maintaining power. It's about doing right by the people who trust you. Even if the council strips my territory, even if we end up packless and starting over, as long as I have you, I have everything that matters. Tears slipped down her cheeks. When did you become such a romantic? When I almost lost the best thing that ever happened to me. He kissed her softly. Whatever happens tomorrow, we face it together. Equal partners. Deal. Deal. They stood together in the darkness, drawing strength from each other, preparing for the battle ahead. Neither knew that tomorrow would be the day everything changed. The High Council Hall was ancient, built from stone that had stood for 1,000 years. The council itself consisted of 7 wolves, the oldest and most powerful alphas from across the continent. Wolves who'd survived centuries and accumulated wisdom and power in equal measure. They were also Sarah noted with sinking heart. All male, all traditional, and all looking at her like she was something distasteful they'd stepped in. Alpha Silvercrest, the head counselor began, his voice like grinding stone. You stand accused of implementing reforms that undermine the fundamental structure of pack hierarchy. How do you answer these charges? Damon stood tall. I answer that hierarchy should be based on merit, not birth, that limiting wolves based on their rank wastes potential and weakens us all. The reforms I've implemented have made the Crimson Moon Pack stronger, not weaker. By whose measure? Another counsellor challenged. You've driven out some of your most experienced members. You've elevated Omegas to positions they're unsuited for. And you've taken as Luna a wolf, who by all accounts lacks the breeding and training necessary for such a role. Sarah felt the insult like a slap. Beside her, Damon growled low. My mate, he said dangerously, is more qualified than Luna's, who've spent their whole lives preparing for the role. She understands pack members because she's lived their struggles. She leads by example instead of command. And the pack loves her for it. Love is not respect, the head counselor said. A Luna must command respect through her bearing, her bloodline, her adherence to tradition. This mechanic may be beloved, but she is not Luna material. Then perhaps your definition of Luna material is wrong, Sarah said quietly. Every eye turned to her. She hadn't been given permission to speak, but she didn't care anymore. You want a Luna who knows her place, who smiles prettily and hosts tea parties and never challenges anything. But that's not leadership, that's performance. Real leadership is seeing what needs to change and having the courage to change it, even when the old guard says it's impossible. How dare you? One counsellor began. How dare I what? Speak truth. Sarah's voice rose. You're all terrified of change because it threatens your power. You've built a system that keeps you at the top and everyone else fighting for scraps. But what happens when the wolves at the bottom realize they don't need you? When they realize they can build something better? Silence! The head counselor commanded, alpha power rolling through the word. Sarah felt it crash against her, demanding submission. Her wolf whimpered, wanting to bow, but she thought of Maria, of all the Omegas who'd believed in her, who'd trusted her to fight for them. She locked her knees and remained standing. I won't be silent, not anymore. You want to strip Damon of his territory because he dared to treat Omegas like they matter? Fine, do it. But know that when you do, you're proving exactly what I'm saying, that this system is broken, that power matters more than justice, and that the High Council cares more about maintaining tradition than doing what's right. The hall erupted in argument. Some councillors looked furious, others looked thoughtful. You have no proof these reforms have improved anything, one councillor said when order was restored. Only anecdotal evidence and emotion. Then let me provide proof, Marcus stood, carrying the binder they'd prepared. Crime rates are down 40%. Pack productivity is up 62%. Satisfaction surveys show a 94% approval rating for the reforms. Educational achievement among perp has increased across all ranks. These aren't emotions, they're facts. He distributed copies to each councillor. They read in silence. This could be fabricated, one muttered. It's not. Alpha Chen stood from the audience. He was one of the oldest alphas in the Western Territories, respected and traditional. I visited the Crimson Moon Pack personally. Everything they claim is true. The pack is thriving. As is mine, Alpha Rodriguez added. I implemented similar reforms 2 years ago. My pack has never been stronger. One by one, their allies stood and spoke. The tide was turning, but the head counselor wasn't swayed. Change for change's sake is dangerous. Tradition exists for a reason. It provides stability, order, predictability. What you're proposing is chaos. What we're proposing, Damon said firmly, is evolution. Traditions should serve the pack, not the other way around. When traditions cause harm, we have a responsibility to change them. And who decides what causes harm? You? The head counselor's lip curled. An alpha who couldn't even maintain his mate bond properly? Who let his omega reject him in front of an entire summit? The insult hit its mark. Sarah saw Damon flinch, saw old shame surface. That wasn't weakness, Sarah said fiercely. That was me being too proud to accept help, too stubborn to see that growth requires discomfort. And you know what Damon did? He let me go. He didn't use alpha command, didn't force the bond, didn't do any of the things a weaker alpha might have done. He respected my choice, even though it destroyed him. She moved to stand directly in front of the council table. You want to know what makes a good alpha. It's not never making mistakes, it's how you respond when you do. Damon made mistakes with me. He admitted them. He changed. He became better. That's strength. Real strength. Not the fragile ego that can't handle being challenged. You're asking us to overturn centuries of tradition based on 2 years of data, the head counselor said coldly. That's not wisdom. It's recklessness. Then declare us reckless. Damon stepped forward, taking Sarah's hand. Strip my territory if you must. But know that wherever we go, however we rebuild, we'll keep fighting for this. Because it's right. And eventually the rest of the packs will see that too. The council members conferred quietly among themselves. The deliberations seemed to last forever. Finally, the head counselor spoke. The High Council finds that while Alpha Silvercrest's reforms are unconventional, there is insufficient evidence of actual harm to his pack. Therefore, we cannot justify forced intervention at this time. Relief flooded through Sarah. They'd won. They'd actually... However, the councillor continued, and her relief evaporated. We are instituting a probationary period of 5 years. The Crimson Moon Pack will undergo quarterly reviews. Any sign of instability, any increase in crime or decrease in pack cohesion, and we will revisit this matter. Additionally, other alphas are forbidden from implementing similar reforms without High Council approval. We will not have every pack in the territories upending tradition without oversight. It was a partial victory at best. They got to keep their territory, keep their reforms, but under constant scrutiny, and other packs were being blocked from following their lead. We accept the council's terms, Damon said, his voice carefully neutral. As they left the hall, Sarah felt the weight of what they'd accomplished, and what they'd failed to accomplish. They'd saved themselves, but not the broader movement. Hey, Damon squeezed her hand. We're still here, still fighting, that's what matters. But other Omegas in other packs will see what we've done and find their own ways to fight, he said. Change doesn't happen all at once, Sarah. It's slow, grinding work. But it's happening. We're proof of that. Marcus caught up to them, grinning despite the mixed verdict. That speech you gave about real strength? That's going to be quoted for years. You made the council look like the fragile ones, not Damon. I just told the truth. The truth is powerful. Never underestimate that. As they headed back to their territory, Sarah felt a strange mix of triumph and frustration. They'd won the battle, but the war was far from over, and something told her the real fight was just beginning. The garage on Packlands was packed. Sarah wiped sweat from her forehead as she supervised the final installation on a pack member's truck. Around her, a dozen wolves worked on various projects, some learning basic maintenance, others mastering advanced repair techniques. Luna, the head gasket on the Chevy is done, called out Thomas, a young alpha-born who'd decided he'd rather be a mechanic than a warrior. Want to check my work? In a minute, Sarah called back. Finish cleaning your workspace first. This was her pride and joy, a fully equipped garage and training centre where any pack member could learn valuable skills regardless of rank. It had started small 5 years ago, just her and a few interested Omegas. Now it employed 20 wolves and had a 6-month waiting list for training spots. You're glowing, Maria observed, walking up with a clipboard. She was Syrah's assistant manager now, confident and capable in ways that would have seemed impossible years ago. I'm sweating, not glowing. No, I mean it, you're literally glowing. Maria's eyes widened. Luna, are you… Sarah paused, her hand unconsciously going to her stomach. She'd been feeling off lately, tired and nauseous. She'd assumed it was stress from the quarterly council reviews, but… Oh my God, she whispered. You didn't know? I've been busy. The last review was 2 weeks ago, and we've been preparing for the Alliance Summit, and… She stopped, a smile breaking across her face. I need to see the pack doctor. An hour later, the diagnosis was confirmed. She was pregnant. 6 weeks along. Sarah sat in the doctor's office trying to process the news. A pup. She and Damon were going to have a pup. Are you okay, Luna? The doctor asked gently. I'm terrified, Sarah admitted. What if I'm a terrible mother? What if the pup inherits my omega status and has to face the same prejudice I did? What if the pup has a mother who'll teach them that their worth isn't determined by rank? The doctor interrupted. What if they grow up in a pack that judges wolves by character instead of birth? You've built that, Luna. You and Alpha Damon both. She was right. The Crimson Moon Pack had changed dramatically. Not just in policy, but in culture. Pups grew up learning that rank was fluid, earned through contribution rather than inherited through blood. Omegas owned businesses, held positions of authority, served as advisors. It wasn't perfect. Change never was. But it was better, and it was spreading. Despite the High Council's prohibition, other packs were quietly implementing similar reforms. Word had gotten out about Crimson Moon's success, and young wolves across the territories were demanding change. The council could suppress open rebellion, but they couldn't stop the slow shift in attitude. Sarah left the doctor's office and headed straight to the pack house. She found Damon in a strategy meeting with Marcus and the senior advisors, discussing trade agreements. Sorry to interrupt, she said, poking her head in. But Alpha, could I have a word? Damon looked up, immediately sensing something was different. Of course. Gentlemen, we'll continue this later. Once they were alone in his office, he pulled her into his arms. What's wrong? You look pale. I'm pregnant. He froze. You're… 6 weeks. I just found out. She searched his face anxiously. Say something. Instead of speaking, he let out a whoop of joy so loud it probably carried through the entire pack house. Then he was spinning her around, laughing, kissing her, his happiness infectious. We're having a pup, he kept repeating. We're actually having a pup. Are you happy? Sarah asked, even though the answer was obvious. Happy? Sarah, I'm ecstatic. Terrified, but ecstatic. He placed a hand gently on her stomach. Our pup. Part you, part me. Perfect. What if they're omega? The question tumbled out. What if they face the same prejudice? Then they'll have us to teach them they're not less than anyone, Damon said firmly. And they'll grow up in a pack that actually believes that. Sarah, our pup is going to be raised in a completely different world than the one we grew up in. A better world. That's our legacy. Over the following months, the pregnancy became pack news. Wolves who'd been skeptical of Sarah's leadership softened when they saw her working in the garage, right up until her 6th month, saw her attending council reviews with a growing belly, saw her refuse special treatment while accepting help when needed. You're making everyone else look bad, one of the senior she-wolves joked during a community event. Most Lunas take it easy during pregnancy. You're still running 2 businesses and reforming pack law. I'm just stubborn, Sarah laughed. Ask Damon. He'll tell you it's my most defining trait. Second most, Damon corrected, slipping an arm around her waist. Your most defining trait is your courage. The pup was born on a spring morning, arriving 3 weeks early and screaming loud enough to wake the entire pack house. It's a girl, the doctor announced, placing the tiny bundle in Sarah's arms. Sarah looked down at her daughter's face, her perfect, beautiful, already scowling daughter, and felt her heart expand in ways she hadn't known were possible. What's her rank? Damon asked the question that everyone wanted to know but were too polite to voice. The doctor checked, then smiled. Beta. Strong beta bloodline. Relief, and something like disappointment warred in Sarah's chest. Relief that her daughter wouldn't face the same prejudice she had. Disappointment that they wouldn't get the chance to prove an Omega could be raised to be anything. "She's perfect either way," Damon said, reading her expression. "Rank doesn't define her. We do. The pack does. The world we've built does." They named her Lydia, after Sarah's grandmother, who'd been the first Omega in their family line to own property. The pack celebrated for 3 days. When Lydia was 6 months old, everything came crashing down. The quarterly council review had gone badly. The head councillor, the same one who'd tried to strip Damon's territory 5 years ago, had seized on a minor increase in territorial disputes as evidence of structural instability. "These reforms are creating confusion," he declared. "Wolves don't know their place anymore. That leads to conflict." "Wolves knowing their worth leads to growth," Sarah countered. "Yes, there are disputes. People are figuring out new dynamics. But overall crime is still down. Satisfaction is still up. For now. But the trend is concerning." The councillor's eyes were cold. "We're extending your probationary period another 5 years and instituting additional oversight." Additional oversight meant council representatives living in their territory, monitoring their every decision. It meant second-guessing, interference, and the slow erosion of their autonomy. "You can't do this," Damon protested. "Our pack is functioning well. One bad quarter doesn't justify—" "We can do whatever we deem necessary. Those were the terms you agreed to 5 years ago." They left the council hall defeated. "They're never going to let this go," Sarah said quietly as they drove home. "They're going to keep finding excuses to interfere until they break us or force us to revert to traditional hierarchy. Then we fight harder." "How?" "We're doing everything right, Damon. We're proving the reforms work. But they don't care about facts. They care about control." Lydia fussed in her car seat, sensing her parents' distress. Sarah reached back to comfort her, her mind racing. When they got home, Marcus was waiting with news that made everything worse. "Alpha Nightshade has filed another challenge," he said grimly. "He's claiming that the council's concerns prove you're unfit to lead. He's demanding a territory trial." "Of course he is," Damon said tiredly. "He's been waiting for an opening." "There's more. He's got backing from 6 other traditionalist alphas. They're forming a coalition. If they can take Crimson Moon, they're going to use it as an example, proof that progressive reforms lead to failure." Sarah felt ice in her veins. "This is coordinated. They've been planning this." "Almost certainly. And with the council already questioning your leadership, they have an opening." Marcus looked between them. "What do we do?" Damon was quiet for a long moment. Then he said the words Sarah had been dreading. "Maybe it's time to consider stepping down." "What?" both Sarah and Marcus said simultaneously. "If I step down, name a successor, we can protect the pack from this fight. Nightshade is after me, not them. If I remove myself from the equation—" "No," Sarah said flatly. "Absolutely not. Sarah, you step down. They win. They prove that alphas can't implement reforms without being destroyed. Every progressive pack in the territories will see that and fall in line." She stood, Lydia in her arms. "We didn't come this far to quit now. I'm not quitting. I'm protecting the pack. By surrendering to bullies, by showing them that fear works." Sarah's voice rose. "What do you think happens to our reforms if Nightshade takes over? To wolves like Maria, who've built their whole lives around the new system? To Omegas who finally have rights?" "I know what happens," Damon said quietly. "That's why I hate this. But Sarah, I won't risk you and Lydia. If this turns into a real war, then we fight it. Together." She moved closer. "You told me 5 years ago that even if we lost everything, we'd have each other. Remember? That as long as we stand together, nothing else matters. That was before we had a daughter to protect. And what kind of world are we protecting her into? One where might makes right? Where tradition trumps justice?" Sarah shifted Lydia to one arm, using the other to grab Damon's hand. "She needs to grow up knowing that some things are worth fighting for, even if you're afraid, even if you might lose." Damon looked torn. She could see the war in his eyes. his instinct to protect his family battling his commitment to the cause. What if we can't win? Then we'll have tried, and maybe our daughter will finish what we started. Sarah smiled sadly. But I think we can win. I think if we're smart and brave and willing to risk everything, we can beat them. Marcus cleared his throat. For what it's worth, Alpha, the pack is ready to fight. I've been polling sentiment. They're not willing to go back to the old ways. Not without a real battle. You see, Sarah said, we're not alone in this. We never were. After a long moment, Damon nodded. All right, we fight. But we do it smart. No more just reacting to their moves. We go on the offense. What did you have in mind? Marcus asked. A slow smile spread across Damon's face. We're going to do what Sarah did at the first council hearing. We're going to make them defend their position instead of us defending ours. The declaration went out 3 days later. Alpha Damon Silvercrest formally challenged the High Council's authority to indefinitely extend probationary periods without cause. He demanded a full territorial assembly, a gathering of all alphas in the Western Territories, to vote on whether the council was overstepping its bounds. It was unprecedented. Alphas didn't challenge the council's authority. The council was supposed to be beyond reproach. They're going to be furious, Marcus warned. Good, Sarah said. Angry people make mistakes. She'd spent the last 3 days reaching out to every progressive alpha she could find, building a coalition. It turned out there were more of them than anyone had realized. Younger alphas who'd been quietly chafing under council restrictions, waiting for someone to make the first move. Alpha Chen was the first to publicly back them. The council was created to resolve disputes and maintain order, he declared in a formal statement. Not to micromanage individual packs that are clearly thriving. I stand with Crimson Moon, Alpha Rodriguez followed. Then Alpha Moonshadow. Then Wolves Serra had never even met started pledging support, inspired by their willingness to stand up to the establishment. Within a week, they had commitments from 23 alphas, nearly half the Western Territories. The council had no choice but to agree to the assembly. This is dangerous, Helena warned when she came to help them prepare. You're essentially trying to restructure pack governance. If you fail, the backlash will be severe. If we don't try, nothing changes, Sarah countered. The council will keep blocking progress forever. The assembly was set for the full moon, 1 month away. That gave them 30 days to prepare their case and shore up support. It also gave the traditionalists 30 days to mount their counterattack. Alpha Nightshade went on the offensive immediately, giving interviews to pack news outlets, claiming that the reforms had made Crimson Moon weak and vulnerable. He spread rumors about internal conflicts, about Omega Wolves abusing their new freedoms, about chaos in the streets. None of it was true, but perception mattered. We need to counter this, Marcus insisted. Let me organize a media campaign. No, Sarah said thoughtfully. Let him talk. Let him make claims we can disprove. What are you thinking? Damon asked. I'm thinking we invite every alpha in the territories to visit Crimson Moon. Let them see for themselves what our pack actually looks like. Let them meet our omegas, see our businesses, witness our community events. Actions speak louder than propaganda. It was brilliant and terrifying. Opening their territory to inspection meant exposing any weaknesses. But it also meant showing their strengths. We'll do it, Damon decided. Full transparency. Anyone who wants to visit is welcome. The invitations went out that afternoon. To their surprise, alphas started showing up almost immediately. Some were clearly looking for problems, others were genuinely curious. Sarah and Damon welcomed them all, giving tours of the garage, the pack schools, the community centres. They introduced visitors to wolves of all ranks, let them ask questions, see the reality instead of the rumours. Most visitors left impressed. Your Omega sector is better organised than our Alpha quarter, one Alpha admitted. They run 3 successful businesses and a trading cooperative. That's not what I was led to believe. Turns out, Sarah said mildly, when you give wolves opportunities instead of limitations, they thrive. But not everyone was convinced. The traditionalist alphas came looking for ammunition, and they found it in the most unexpected place. During the third week of open visits, a young Omega named Daniel got into a physical altercation with an alpha-born wolf over a perceived slight. It was minor, a shoving match that was broken up quickly, but the traditionalists seized on it. "See?" Nightshade proclaimed. "Omegas who don't know their place, getting into fights with their betters. This is what reform brings: chaos and disrespect." "It brings equality," Sarah shot back in a public response. "Yes, sometimes that means conflicts. But in traditional packs, that fight never would have happened because the Omega would have been too afraid to stand up for himself. Is that really better?" The debate raged across pack media. Some wolves agreed with her, others sided with Nightshade. The assembly was going to be closer than they'd hoped. 3 days before the gathering, Sarah received a visitor she hadn't expected. The head counselor himself appeared at the pack house, alone and unannounced. "I'd like to speak with you privately," he said. "No recording, no witnesses, just a conversation." Every instinct screamed danger, but Sarah agreed. They met in a neutral conference room, just the two of them. "You've caused quite the disruption," the counselor said without preamble. "I've fought for what's right." "Right according to whom? You're barely 30 years old. I've been alive for 3 centuries. I've seen packs rise and fall, watched reforms that seemed brilliant lead to disaster. You're risking everything for an ideology you don't fully understand the consequences of." "Then explain it to me," Sarah challenged. "Tell me why Omegas shouldn't have rights. Tell me why rank at birth should determine a wolf's entire life. Make me understand your position." He studied her for a long moment. "I don't think Omegas shouldn't have rights. I think sudden dramatic change destabilizes communities. Traditions exist because they've survived. They've been tested over time and found to work. When you tear them down, you create uncertainty. And uncertainty leads to fear, which leads to violence. So we should just accept injustice because changing it might be uncomfortable. I'm saying change should be gradual, measured, not revolutionary." "How gradual?" "Another century while wolves suffer under unfair hierarchies." Sarah leaned forward. "You talk about stability, but what you really mean is maintaining power structures that benefit those already at the top. I'm not interested in gradual improvement. I'm interested in actual justice." The counselor's expression was unreadable. "You remind me of someone I knew a long time ago. A young alpha who wanted to change everything, convinced he could build a better world." His voice turned sad. "He failed, and a lot of wolves died because of that failure. I'm sorry that happened, but I'm not him, and my success rate so far suggests—" "5 years is nothing," he interrupted. "Check back in 50 years. If your reforms have held, if the pack is still thriving, then maybe you'll have proven something. But right now, you're still in the honeymoon phase. The real test comes when you face serious adversity. Like this assembly? Like you trying to tear everything down? Like economic collapse, natural disaster, war. Things that test whether your new structures can hold under pressure." He stood. "I came here to offer you a deal. Withdraw your challenge to council authority. Accept the extended probation. Keep your reforms, but stop trying to spread them. In return, we'll leave you alone." Sarah stood as well. "And if I refuse? Then at the assembly, I'll do everything in my power to destroy you. I'll expose every flaw, every weakness, every tiny crack in your perfect paradise. And when I'm done, your pack will be so damaged that Nightshade won't even need to challenge for it. It'll fall apart on its own." It was a threat, and an offer wrapped in one. A chance to preserve what they'd built by giving up the larger fight. "No," Sarah said simply. "No. I won't stop fighting. I won't accept that injustice is okay as long as it's stable, and I won't let fear of failure stop me from trying." She met his ancient eyes steadily. "You can try to destroy us at the assembly, but we'll be ready. And even if we lose, we'll have proved that someone was willing to stand up to you. That matters." The councillor regarded her silently. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. "You're either very brave or very foolish. Probably both." "For what it's worth," he said as he reached the door, "I hope you survive the assembly, not because I agree with you, but because the world needs wolves who aren't afraid to fight for what they believe in, even when they're wrong." After he left, Sarah sat alone in the conference room, processing the conversation. They'd turned down their last chance at compromise. Now it was all or nothing. She just hoped nothing wasn't what they got. The Grand Hall was packed beyond capacity. Every alpha in the Western Territories had come, along with their key advisors and witnesses. The galleries were full of pack members who'd travelled to see history made. News outlets had cameras positioned throughout the space. This wasn't just a hearing anymore. It was a referendum on the future of pack governance. Sarah stood beside Damon on the main floor, Lydia strapped to her chest in a carrier. They'd debated leaving her with a sitter, but ultimately decided against it. This fight was about her future. She should be here to witness it. The head councillor gavelled the assembly to order. "We are here to address a challenge to council authority," he announced. "Alpha Silvercrest claims that the High Council has overstepped its bounds by indefinitely extending probationary oversight without sufficient cause. The Council maintains that ongoing monitoring is necessary given the experimental nature of Crimson Moon's governance structure. We will hear arguments, then vote." The vote was the unprecedented part. Never before had alphas been given a direct say in council decisions. But Damon's challenge had forced it. If they wanted to maintain legitimacy, they couldn't simply dismiss it out of hand. "Alpha Silvercrest, you may present your case." Damon stepped forward, and Sarah felt pride surge through her. He'd come so far from the insecure Alpha who'd been too afraid to defend his Omega mate. Now he stood tall, confident, ready to face down the entire establishment. "The High Council was established to maintain peace and resolve disputes," Damon began, "not to dictate how individual packs govern themselves. My pack has met every benchmark you've set. Crime is down, productivity is up. Our wolves are happy, healthy, and thriving. Yet you continue to extend our probation, continue to threaten intervention, solely because our governance structure makes you uncomfortable." He gestured to the crowd. "Many of you have visited Crimson Moon in recent weeks. You've seen our pack for yourselves. Did any of you witness chaos? Instability? Wolves who didn't know their place causing problems?" Several alphas shook their heads. What you saw was a community that judges wolves by character instead of birth. Where an Omega can run a successful business. Where an Alpha-born can choose to be a mechanic instead of a warrior. Where rank is earned through contribution rather than inherited through bloodline. And it works. "For now," the head councillor interjected, "but these structures haven't been tested over time. One economic downturn, one major crisis, and your pretty experiment could collapse." "Then let it collapse on its own terms," Damon shot back. "Don't artificially create that collapse through constant interference. You're not protecting my pack. You're undermining it." The debate raged for hours. Traditionalist alphas argued that the council's oversight was necessary, that removing it would invite chaos across all territories. Progressive alphas countered that individual packs should have autonomy as long as they weren't causing harm. Then it was Sarah's turn to speak. She approached the centre floor very aware of all the eyes on her. This was the moment. Everything came down to this. "I wasn't supposed to be here," she began quietly. An Omega mechanic standing beside an Alpha, challenging the High Council? That's not how the story is supposed to go. I was supposed to know my place, accept my limitations, be grateful for whatever scraps of recognition I could get. She looked around the hall, meeting eyes with wolves of all ranks. But here's what I learned. Those limitations were artificial. Imposed by a system that benefited from keeping wolves like me down. And when I refused to accept them, when I demanded to be seen as an equal partner to my mate, something amazing happened. The world didn't end. The pack didn't fall apart. Instead, it got stronger. She pulled a folder from her bag. These are testimonials from Omegas across the Western Territories. Wolves who've heard about our reforms and have been quietly implementing their own small changes. Starting businesses, pursuing education, demanding respect. She handed the folder to the nearest council member. This is bigger than Crimson Moon. This is a movement. And you can't stop it by intimidating one pack. Pretty words, Nightshade called out. But what about that fight last week? The Omega who attacked an Alpha-born? You mean the Omega who defended himself when an Alpha-born tried to push him around? Sarah corrected. In a traditional pack, that Alpha would have gotten away with it because the Omega would have been too afraid to fight back. Is that really better? Having wolves live in fear instead of standing up for themselves? It's called maintaining order. It's called oppression. Sarah's voice was steel. And I'm done pretending otherwise. Yes, equality is messy sometimes. Yes, there are conflicts when power dynamics shift, but those conflicts are symptoms of growth, not proof of failure. She turned to address the full assembly. You all have a choice to make today. Not just about whether the council overstepped with Crimson Moon, but about what kind of world you want to build. One where might makes right and tradition trumps justice, or one where every wolf has the chance to prove their worth regardless of what rank they were born into. We're not asking you to abandon all tradition, Damon added, joining her. We're asking you to examine which traditions serve the pack and which ones just serve those already in power. To be willing to change the things that cause harm, even if they're comfortable. To choose courage over complacency. The head councillor stood. The council acknowledges that change is sometimes necessary, but uncontrolled change is dangerous. If we remove oversight from Crimson Moon, what's to stop every young alpha from implementing radical reforms without thinking through the consequences? What stopped anyone before you invented probationary periods? Sarah challenged. Alphas have always had autonomy. You're creating a problem that doesn't exist to justify interference that isn't needed. And if your pack fails, if in 5 years or 10 years or 50 years, these reforms prove to be unsustainable, then we fail, Damon said simply, and we deal with the consequences, but we'd rather fail trying to build something better than succeed at maintaining something broken. The head councillor looked like he wanted to argue further, but another council member spoke up, one of the younger ones. I move we proceed to vote. The arguments have been made. Let the alphas decide. After a brief consultation, the head councillor agreed. Very well. The vote is this. Should the High Council's probationary oversight of the Crimson Moon Pack be ended, granting them full autonomy despite their non-traditional governance structure? All in favour? Sarah held her breath as hands raised. She counted frantically. Alpha Chen, Alpha Rodriguez, Alpha Moonshadow, and others they'd cultivated as allies. But also some unexpected supporters, older alphas she thought would side with tradition. All opposed? More hands. Nightshade, of course, and his coalition. Several traditional packs. The count was close. Agonizingly close. The head councillor tallied the results. The silence in the hall was absolute. By a vote of 43 to 39, he announced slowly, the motion passes. Probationary oversight of the Crimson Moon Pack is hereby ended. They are granted full autonomy in governance matters. The hall exploded. Sarah felt Damon's arms around her, felt tears streaming down her face, felt Lydia squirming between them. They'd won. They'd actually won. But the head councillor wasn't finished. However, his voice cut through the celebration. The council also moves to establish a new framework. Any pack wishing to implement similar reforms must first petition the council for approval. We will review proposed changes and grant permission on a case-by-case basis. This ensures thoughtful implementation rather than chaotic revolution. It was a compromise, not the total freedom Sarah had wanted, but not the locked-down tyranny of before either. Other packs could follow Crimson Moon's lead, but with council oversight to prevent the most radical changes. "We accept the framework," Damon said, after a quick glance at Sarah. She nodded. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Real, tangible progress. As they left the hall, surrounded by congratulating allies, Nightshade blocked their path. "This isn't over," he snarled. "You may have won today, but I'll be watching, waiting for you to fail." "Then you'll be waiting a long time," Sarah said calmly, "because we're not going anywhere." He stalked off and Marcus laughed. "Did you see his face? He was so sure the council would shut you down." "They almost did," Damon admitted. 4 votes. That's how close we came. 4 votes is still a win, Sarah pointed out. She looked down at Lydia, who was sleeping peacefully through all the chaos. "We did it, baby girl. We built you a better world." The months following the assembly were a whirlwind. 3 packs immediately petitioned the council for permission to implement Omega rights reforms. The council, bound by their new framework, had to seriously consider each petition. They approved 2 and denied 1, establishing a pattern. Reforms that had proven successful in Crimson Moon were generally acceptable, while more experimental ideas needed more evidence. It was slower than Sarah wanted, but it was movement in the right direction. More importantly, the cultural shift was undeniable. Omegas across the territories had seen one of their own stand before the entire alliance and refuse to back down. They'd seen her win, and that changed everything. "I've gotten 73 letters this month," Sarah told Damon one evening as they sat on their balcony, watching the sunset over Packlands. "From Omegas in other territories, thanking me, asking for advice, telling me they're starting their own businesses or pursuing education or demanding respect from their alphas." "You started a revolution," Damon said, pulling her closer. "We started a revolution," she corrected. "None of this would have happened if you hadn't been willing to change, to admit you were wrong and become better." He kissed her temple. "I was such an idiot in the beginning." "Yes, you were," she agreed cheerfully, "but you're my idiot now." Lydia, now 18 months old, toddled over and demanded to be picked up. Damon scooped her up, making her giggle. "Dada, high," she demanded, pointing at the sky. "You want to go high." He lifted her above his head, and her delighted laughter filled the air. Watching them, Sarah felt a contentment she'd never imagined possible. This life, messy and complicated and constantly challenging, was everything she'd never known she wanted. Her phone buzzed. A message from Maria. "Emergency at the garage. Engine fire, contained but need you." "Duty calls," Sarah sighed, standing. "Think you can handle bedtime solo?" "We'll survive," Damon assured her. "Go save the day, Luna." The garage fire turned out to be minor, a faulty wire that had sparked but been quickly extinguished. Still, Sarah stayed to help clean up and make sure everything was safe for tomorrow's operations. "You didn't have to come out here tonight," Maria said as they worked. "You've got a family to get home to." "This is family too," Sarah replied, gesturing around the garage at the wolves still working. "All of it is." "Yeah," Maria smiled. "It really is." As Sarah drove home late that night, she reflected on how far they'd all come. The scared Omega she'd been 3 years ago, terrified of being judged inadequate, seemed like a different person. She'd learned that strength came in many forms, not just the ability to fight or dominate, but the courage to be vulnerable, to admit mistakes, to keep pushing forward even when the odds seemed impossible. When she got home, she found Damon asleep in the nursery, Lydia sprawled across his chest. Both were snoring softly. Sarah's heart melted. She grabbed her phone and snapped a picture, then carefully extracted Lydia and put her in the crib. Damon stirred as she covered him with a blanket. You're back," he mumbled sleepily. "I'm back. Come on, let's get you to bed." They stumbled to their bedroom together, collapsing onto the mattress, fully clothed. "Love you," Damon murmured. "Love you too," Sarah whispered back. As she drifted off to sleep, She thought about the journey that had brought them here, the rejection that had almost destroyed them both, the pride and fear that had nearly kept them apart, the slow, painful growth they'd both had to undergo to become the partners each other needed. It hadn't been easy, it hadn't been perfect, but it had been worth it. Every single moment had been worth it. 2 years later, Sarah stood in the same grand hall where she'd first accepted Damon's rejection. But this time, she wasn't there to defend herself or her pack. She was there to witness history. The High Council was implementing sweeping reforms to pack governance across all territories. Omega rights were being standardized, not as strongly as Sarah would have liked, but far better than they'd been. Rank-based discrimination was officially prohibited. Packs were required to provide educational opportunities to wolves of all ranks. It was slow change, incremental change, but it was real. 5 years ago, if someone had told me I'd see this day, I wouldn't have believed them, Alpha Chen said, standing beside Sarah as they watched the proceedings. You and Damon didn't just change one pack, you changed our entire world. We just refused to accept that things couldn't be better, Sarah replied. That's all it took, refusing to give up. Helena Ashworth approached, looking older but no less formidable. Luna Sarah, there's someone who wants to meet you. She led Sarah to a young Omega woman, barely 20, who looked nervous and awed. This is Jasmine, Helena introduced. She's petitioned to be trained as a diplomatic advisor for her pack, the first Omega to do so. I wanted to thank you, Jasmine said in a rush. If you hadn't fought for us, hadn't shown that Omegas could lead, I never would have had this chance. You changed my life. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. You changed your own life by being brave enough to try. I just helped open the door. Still, Jasmine insisted, thank you for everything. After she left, Sarah found herself alone in one of the hall's side chambers, overwhelmed by emotion. So many lives changed, so many wolves given opportunities they'd never have had before. All because she and Damon had refused to accept the status quo. There you are, Damon's voice came from the doorway. He entered, carrying Lydia on his shoulders. Their daughter was 4 now, confident and fearless in ways that made Sarah's heart sing. Lydia wanted to show you something. I can write my name, Lydia announced proudly. Teacher Sarah said I did a good job. That's amazing, sweetheart, Sarah said, hugging her. I'm so proud of you. And I have a friend named Tommy. He's Omega-born, but teacher says that doesn't matter because everyone is equal. Sarah and Damon exchanged glances over her head. That was the world they'd built, one where a 4-year-old took equality for granted, where rank was just a fact rather than a definition. That's right, baby, Sarah said softly. Everyone is equal. Don't ever forget that. Later, as they drove home, Lydia asleep in the back seat, Damon reached over and took Sarah's hand. Do you ever think about how different things could have been? He asked. If you hadn't shown up at that first challenge, if you'd let me fall to Nightshade. Sometimes, Sarah admitted, but I try not to dwell on it. We're here now. That's what matters. I almost destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me because I was too proud to see your worth, Damon said quietly. I think about that a lot. How close I came to losing everything. But you didn't. You grew, you changed. That's what I fell in love with, Damon. Not the perfect alpha who never made mistakes, but the man who could admit when he was wrong and work to be better. He brought her hand to his lips. I'm still working on being better. Every day. So am I, Sarah said. That's the thing about growth. It never really stops. There's always more to learn, more ways to improve. Think we'll ever have it all figured out? She laughed. God, I hope not. How boring would that be? They drove in comfortable silence for a while, the landscape of their territory passing by. Sarah saw the changes everywhere. New businesses run by Omegas, mixed-rank work crews, pups playing together regardless of bloodline. It wasn't perfect. There were still wolves who resented the changes, still pockets of resistance. But it was better. Undeniably, measurably better. When they got home, Marcus was waiting with news. Alpha Nightshade's pack is in rebellion, he said without preamble. The younger wolves have overthrown him. They're implementing reforms similar to ours. Sarah felt a fierce satisfaction. Calm as a bitch, isn't it? Apparently he tried to crack down harder after our assembly win, and it backfired. The Omega's organised, got support from progressive alphas in his pack, and staged a coup. They're asking if we can send advisors to help them transition. Send whoever's willing to go, Damon decided, and let it be known that Crimson Moon supports peaceful transitions to more equitable governance. After Marcus left, Sarah stood at their window looking out over the packlands, processing this latest development. Nightshade, the alpha who'd tried so hard to destroy them, brought down by his own unwillingness to change. You know what the saddest part is? She said. He could have adapted, could have learned and grown like you did. But he was too rigid, too committed to the old ways. And it cost him everything. That's the thing about refusing to evolve, Damon said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Eventually the world moves on without you. They stood together watching the sunset. Their daughter asleep upstairs, their pack thriving around them. It had been a long, hard journey from that first meeting in her garage. Through rejection and pain, pride and regret, fear and courage, they'd built something extraordinary. Not a perfect world, that didn't exist, but a better one, a fairer one. A world where wolves like the one Sarah had been had a fighting chance. And that was enough. The ceremony was beautiful. Lydia Silvercrest stood before her pack, accepting the Luna's mantle from her mother. At 24, she was confident, capable, and ready to lead alongside her mate, an Omega-born wolf named Marcus, named after his godfather, who worked as a teacher. Sarah watched from the front row, tears streaming down her face. Damon squeezed her hand. She's going to be amazing, he whispered. She already is, Sarah replied. The pack had grown significantly over the years. What had started as one pack's experiment had spread across the territories, creating a network of progressive communities that supported and traded with each other. The High Council, though still traditional in many ways, had been forced to adapt or become irrelevant. Change was slow, but it was happening. After the ceremony, as the pack celebrated, Sarah found herself approached by a young historian. Luna Sarah, I'm writing a dissertation on the reform movement, the young woman said eagerly. Would you be willing to be interviewed? I want to document how it all started. It started with a rejection, Sarah said, smiling at the memory. With an arrogant alpha and a stubborn omega, who both needed to learn that strength comes in many forms. The story of you and Alpha Damon is legendary, the historian gushed. The Omega who stood up to the High Council, the Alpha who chose love over tradition, you changed everything. We just refused to accept that things couldn't be better, Sarah corrected gently. The real heroes are the wolves who came after, who took what we started and built on it, who kept pushing even when it was hard. She looked around at the celebrating pack, wolves of all ranks laughing together, Omega-born advisors chatting with Alpha-born merchants, children playing without regard for bloodline. This was the world they'd fought for, the world they'd almost lost because of pride and fear. Later, as the party wound down, Damon found her on their familiar balcony. Thinking about the old days? He asked, settling beside her. Always, Sarah admitted, remembering how close we came to losing all of this. I told you once that losing you taught me more than 100 political victories ever could, Damon said softly. I meant it. Every good thing in my life traces back to that moment when you stood in front of everyone and accepted my rejection. You could have begged, could have collapsed, could have done what every Omega is supposed to do. But you didn't. I was too stubborn, Sarah said with a slight smile. You were too strong, and too proud to accept scraps when you deserved everything. He pulled her close. I spent 3 months trying to change you into someone you weren't. It took losing you to realize that who you were, grease-stained hands and all, was exactly who I needed. And I spent those same 3 months being too proud to accept help, Sarah countered. Too hurt to see that growth requires discomfort. We were both idiots. The best kind of idiots, Damon agreed. The kind who learned from their mistakes. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their pack lands settle into night. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, it always did, but tonight they could simply be grateful for the journey that had brought them here. Do you have any regrets? Sarah asked. Damon considered this. I regret hurting you. I regret wasting time we could have spent together. But I don't regret the journey, because it made us who we are. And I love who we became. Even when I show up to formal dinners with grease under my nails, Sarah teased. Especially then, he said seriously, because it reminds me that you're real, that you never compromised who you were, even when everyone was telling you to. That's the strength I fell in love with. Sarah rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the mate bond hum contentedly between them. It had been damaged, nearly destroyed, but they'd rebuilt it stronger than before. That was the thing about bonds forged through adversity. They didn't break easily. I love you, she said simply. I love you too, Damon replied. Always have. Even when I was too stupid to show it properly. From inside, they heard Lydia's laughter and the sounds of celebration continuing. Their daughter's future was bright, built on the foundation they'd laid, and someday her children would grow up in an even better world, one where the reforms they'd fought for were simply the way things were. Progress didn't happen all at once. It happened in small moments of courage, in choices to stand up instead of backing down, in the willingness to admit mistakes and grow from them. It happened when an Omega mechanic looked an Alpha in the eye and said, I accept your rejection, and the hall fell silent. Until the Alpha King lost control, not of his power or his pack, but of the pride and fear that had almost destroyed everything that mattered. Some called it rejection, others called it karma. Sarah called it the beginning of everything that mattered, and as she sat with her mate under the stars, their life's work celebrated around them, she knew that every moment of pain had been worth it, because in the end, they hadn't just found each other, they'd found themselves. And that made all the difference. If you enjoyed Sarah and Damon's journey from rejection to redemption, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below, subscribe for more stories. Until next time.